Hi, I'm Kim,
And I'm Torra.
and this is our podcast,
Parenting young
Adults
adults.
with Kim and Torra. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, for this episode, we have another special guest. And so, without further delay, I'm going to admit her and have her come in and introduce herself. Hello again, Tawana. How are you?
Hello again. I'm fine. How are you doing, Kim?
I am fine, thank you. Tawana Carter, this is my co host, Torra Williams.
It is
Torra,
such a pleasure meeting you.
Hey, Tor, we got the tea power going here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Tawana, as you probably know, we always allow our guests to introduce themselves, and I would like to offer you the opportunity to introduce yourself now.
Okay. So I am Dr. Tawana Carter. I'm a career transition coach for professional women in their 40s and 50s. And I help those women overcome the fear and anxiety of transitioning to a new career by
Ooh,
empowering them to recognize and understand and communicate their unique value by empowering them with a sense of deep belief in their own unique strengths and abilities. And in addition to that, I'm also a licensed therapist. I've been a licensed therapist for over 10 years. This year will make 11 years. It's more like 10 and a half years. And so, in addition to transition coaching, which I do a lot of anxiety coaching, I also do anxiety counseling. And I've done quite a bit of that with the pandemic.
I can
that is
imagine.
awesome. That is, and I was just smiling because I'm like, when you said therapist, how many people have said we need African American female therapists in this world. And trust me, you are well needed.
Yes.
Well needed.
Yes. It's been interesting because I have Hispanic males that come and I have Black males that come, and neither of those groups have been provided a space to just be and tell what they know, tell what they
Absolutely.
feel. They're
Absolutely.
not even given that space to do that. So I always count it an honor when they come to me, because at first, they're all buttoned up like, no, I'm fine, everything's fine. I was like, no, it's not.
No,
No,
not at
it's
all.
not.
Not at all.
That's
And so
wonderful.
it is. It's an honor when they do trust you to just let it out.
I only know
Um,
you, well, getting to know you, and then I have a friend who lives in California, and she's also a therapist, and she gears more to men, also African American men, and she just
yeah,
opens up this world. And she's been like telling me little bits of stuff about, because of course you hear that women, we spew all of our emotions out. We know that
yes, we're
we have issues,
processors.
yeah, but men hide their childhood traumas and their issues, and they do a lot of things, and we don't know, and they don't, it's not like
Yeah,
they have guy code. They don't tell us. Like our girl code,
yeah,
guys know about us, girls know about us, but nobody
right.
knows about guy codes. I don't even know if
But
we talk amongst each other.
and there's that thing. Well, I'm a man. Nobody's gonna whip my behind. Nobody's
There it
gonna
is.
treat me like this. Nobody's gonna treat me like that. And they don't want to say, yeah, I was out by myself driving and two cops beat the crap out of me. That's not something you're gonna talk to your brothers about. And
Yeah.
so there are a lot of men out there that have had that to happen. They push that stuff down.
And
Oh,
then what does
no.
it manifest into is the problem.
Yeah, how
There you
does it,
go.
yeah, how do they act
Yeah,
out? Because we know that women talk. We've been taught to talk, to get through
yeah,
it, to talk to our sister and all of that sort of thing. And men many times are taught to keep everything buttoned up and to not be emotional. So I'm
right,
sure when they come to
right.
you and get the freedom to let it out after
Yeah.
you cajole them into doing so, that
Well,
it's a
it's
great relief.
it's not so much as cajoled as to say, I have 6.5 years in the military. I grew up in the military, and my dad, retired after 24 years. There's not much that has happened on this earth that I haven't heard in a
Wow.
counseling session. So, there's space. I know that you went through things. I know, from a child, I can remember 5 or 6 people talking in hushed tones when
Mhm.
Black men were getting a beat down. That's been six to late 60s and 70s
You said you
that I
experienced that?
remember. I remember the adults talking about it in
Oh,
hushed tones.
okay.
I
Okay.
remember that as a kid, 5, 6, 7 year olds as a kid. I remember those conversations, and I remember the hush hush, everybody's trying to talk about it. But I remember Black men have been getting the beat down for a long time. And
I've
so once
never
I say
heard that.
that, yeah, once I say that, they're like, oh, I said, I know. I may not know the specific incidents that you talking about, but I know you gone through something. And then
Mhm.
that opens up that space for them to go, oh, I was like, yeah.
So, Tawana, so Tora, have you ever heard any hushed conversations of that nature? I never heard anything like
Never.
that.
And that was
Ooh,
surprising when she said that to me because I even tried to think of, I've heard men saying that they might have, roughed up somebody in high school or had a fight, in their later years in a bar, but I've never heard of the trauma of a Black man saying he caught the beat down or got a, beat up and,
yeah.
you know what I'm
You're
saying?
talking about by police, correct?
Every,
Correct, correct.
mhm.
It would,
And but I
I'm
wonder
from
if
down, yeah,
she's from Alabama. I
I'm
wonder
from
if yeah.
Alabama,
I was
right?
thinking I was
So
going to
it's a
ask you where you
different,
were from. Yeah.
it's I'm from Alabama. And so it happened, right? It happened, I remember being told when you go out, you act like this for the white folks. Don't you do this in front of those white folks, don't you? I got that as a kid and I got that as a child because my parents got it and they got it because their parents got it.
When you
And so go ahead.
No, I was gonna say when you said they said don't act like this, were you saying well like don't be disobedient or were they like or just
Correct.
act submissive, like
You dress a certain way, you talk a certain way, you behave a certain way when you go out in public. That was very strong. I got tons of lessons. My siblings and I got tons of lessons. You don't do this when you go out in public. We don't act like this. We don't behave like this in
Mhm.
public. So there was a certain persona that we were told. It
mhm,
was like drilled into us when we went out in public. You don't do this, you don't do that. And so, of course, as a therapist and going through training, I realized that was part of survival. No
mhm,
doubt that came from the Emmett Till, no doubt that came from and plus, my family has a lot of trauma
mhm,
in it. And my dad told me just in the past few years. And I knew my granddad was a bad egg. My granddad. My granddad had a whole cache of weapons, right? That's how my mother grew up.
mhm,
That's how they grew up, right? And so my dad was telling me that my granddad and his father-in-law were outside of the jail and they could hear my grandmother's brother, my grandfather's brother-in-law
mhm,
being beaten by the policeman.
mhm,
And my grandfather was there. He had two of his young sons with him, which were under like 7. And
mhm.
his father-in-law was ready to ride posse to the jail, right? To get his son out. And so my grandfather was like, they gonna kill us. We got 2 kids. We can't ride. But that's how, my grandfather and his father-in-law were. And then he was like, well, it looked like, oh, yeah, we can't go in. So that trauma of being beaten wasn't something, it was a story that happened. It happened in my family, and
What?
my parents knew, my mom knew, they knew, right? And
Mhm,
my mom told stories how, as a kid, because my dad lived in city limits in
mhm,
Alabama, and
mhm.
my mom lived in a rural area.
Okay.
And she would say how, Friday, Saturday night,
Mhm.
white men would get drunk and they would ride through her neighborhood and shoot up. But like I
Is
said,
that
my
the picnic?
granddad, it wasn't a picnic. They wait till it was dark. It was about time to get dark. They would ride through the black neighborhoods and shoot up. But like I said, my granddad had an arsenal. He had his, when I think of my granddad, I think about, what Malcolm X's father said, I'm a man. Well, my granddad lived that. So there was a chain. My mother said it was a chain. When they first heard the shots, there were people who ran from house, ran across the house to house to house. And by the time they got into the neighborhood, they were loaded up and firing back.
Good.
That was that's what my mom grew up with. So she, even though she grew up with that, there was still this in the daytime though. You
Mhm,
have to behave this way. You
mhm.
don't do this. You don't do that. You don't do that. So that was part of my upbringing. Oh my God, until like I was 15, 16 years old.
And I would love if we could, you know me, I would love if we could adopt that policy of fighting back these days, because it just seems to me that we will kill each other at the drop of a dime, but we'll let other people do stuff to us and live without any consequences, nobody doing anything. Um,
Yeah,
we
but
don't fight
that's a
back
part of,
anymore.
yeah, and so that's a part of the dominant system. You have a group of people who are raised in a dominant system and told they're not worth anything. So if you're not worth anything, neither is the next man,
All the
neither
people.
is the next, or the next, or the next. So you killing each other, you already were told you all are not worth anything anyway.
Mhm,
In
mhm.
And you
fact, we
go,
have that figured out to the legal system because you kill a white man, you're going to prison for life, if not death row. But you kill another black man, you might get 2, 3, whatever years. And so it's, you
and
have
not
that,
only
right?
the legal system, but the psychological programming is such that they hold
Yes.
the members of the dominant race in such high regard that it
Yes.
would not occur to them, we ought to retaliate.
But think about it. But think about it. When you go out here in front of these white folks, don't you be acting a fool. I gotta act special because I'm going out. So if I gotta act special, it must mean those people are special. Now,
Not to
that's not
mention,
what they meant. That's not what they meant. It was survival technique. But what, as a child, heard, most of us heard, well, they must be special people because we got to get dressed up when we go in front of them. We have to act a certain way when we go in front of them.
but not only that, the Jesus on your wall looks like them. The Jesus in the church you go to looks like them.
Yeah.
And so, even though your parents may be telling you this as a survival tactic, there is still that those other levels of
Yeah.
programming that are
Yeah.
involved in that too. So, wow. Well, this wasn't the topic we intended to discuss, but this is such an interesting conversation. And it does sort of segue into
Yeah,
the topic that I
absolutely.
said I wanted to discuss with you because that we wanted to discuss with you because you and Torah have something in common. And that is that both of you have Black daughters
Mhm,
who date white young men. And
mhm.
I wanted
Yeah.
to explore that and allow you all to talk about that because it's something you have in common. And I guess I would start by asking, what is your general feeling about the fact that your daughters date white?
So I don't have any problems with it. I remember, so I grew up in the military, right? So I grew up around Vietnamese, white, black, African, French, you name it. I grew up around that. So there's quite a bit of what, some folks call race mingling, right? There's
Mhm.
quite a bit of interracial dating since I was 6, 7, and the first time I went to Germany where I was stationed with my dad. So I have
You're saying
always
you
seen it.
saw it or you
I saw
experienced
it.
it?
No,
Okay.
I experienced it and I saw it.
Okay.
It's just, we're army brats, right? My dad
Okay.
was in the army.
Yeah.
It is something that was normal, even in the 70s. I mean, I had a white boyfriend in what, first, second grade. That
Mhm,
was
mhm.
something that was, we all did it, correct? And I
Did
grew
you
up,
know he was white?
yeah,
You did? Okay. See, I didn't
yeah,
know.
but, and so so I have a storied history, right?
Mhm.
And my mother was truly something else. My dad was Martin Luther King and my mother was Malcolm X. So
Oh,
that's how I grew up, right?
Jesus.
So my mother, she took a different tactic with race when I was growing up. Number one, my school only had like 2 or 3 white kids in it, but they were poor. And I didn't know that at the time.
Mhm.
They were poor, they would come to school dirty, they would come to school bare feet. So my assumption, because these are the only white people I saw, was that all white people were like that. And they just, some of them cleaned up when we went to town. But in my mindset, because it's all I saw at school, was all white people
That's
are this,
crazy.
right? And so my mother pushed that. She was like, "Yeah, they're nasty. They're dogs. They're this. They're that. They're this." And so that's how I grew up. But in Alabama, but then we went to Germany where we lived among everybody. So
Mhm,
I guess my mother was fit to be tied because my best friend was white.
mhm.
Angie Watley, my best friend was white, and I can remember my mom having problems with that. My dad is fine, but my mom having problems with that. So I didn't. I didn't see anything wrong with the dating or the friendship. The first time I felt uncomfortable having a white best friend is back in the 70s, the ability groups, right? So you were smart, you were super smart, you were in the middle, or you were in the lower because it was legal to do that.
Mhm.
So I was put in the smarter group, and we were all whisked away for some kind of school experiment. So I was there, maybe 3 black kids total, And all the other black kids went to another school. All my friends went somewhere else. It was fine with me. I really didn't notice, correct? But when my white friend and I, because we had way more freedom than
Mhm,
they did.
mhm,
And so we went over to that school. We were talking to the fence, and that was the first time I felt uncomfortable because they were saying rude things about my friend who was white. So I was very uncomfortable with that. I didn't really hang out with them after that because I was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to breach that. It was my friend. She's white, but who cares? But
mhm,
they saw it differently. So that was my upbringing, very much used to that. I also joined the military, right? And so living in the South, trying to date was interesting. So I actually raised my girls. You need to find love where love finds you. And
mhm.
that's what I said. You find love where love finds you. If love is black, white, Asian, Italian, African, Filipino, whatever love is, when you find it, it finds you. That's your person, right? And I can remember at the time my daughter was 10 and she was hot. She wasn't dating no white guy. What was I going to say something like that for?
Really?
And she was not. And then I pulled them out into, a school system that was predominantly white. And she got to watch all the little black boys date all the white girls.
Mm.
Hey.
And so I watched this. I watched it, and I watched it with all three of my daughters. All the little black boys, dated all the little white girls.
Yes, they did.
And I told them, you find love where love finds you. I
That's
never said
right.
you have to date white, you got to date black. I
No.
just said you find it where it finds you. So all three of them, their first boyfriends were all white, but I can say that not one black boy tried to date them.
Right, right, right.
So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
So it's by circumstance, it just is how it turned out to be. But have they ever, either of them, you have three daughters, right?
I have three daughters. One of them have dated a black guy, just one.
Okay. Just one has
Mhm.
dated black. And how old are they, Tawana?
They are, oh, I know you're going to ask me this question. So my oldest is 27, right?
Uh-huh.
And the middle daughter, because she keeps lying about her age.
Sounds like an Aquarius Torah.
Ah,
So she's 23 and the baby is 22.
Oh,
okay. And so which
Yeah,
one is the one that dated black?
the middle one.
The
okay.
middle one? Did it
Yeah, so
last
her,
for a while
yeah,
or was it short
it
lived?
did not. It was short-lived. Um, it was short-lived. Not at the it was her first white boyfriend was way short-lived. That was a couple of weeks. And that one went south. And then the black guy, they dated for several months through most of her freshman year, and then they broke up. And then she dated another guy who was Russian part, he was white, but he was Russian, of Russian descent. And
Ooh.
so that one lasted a little longer,
Do
a
you
lot
think
longer.
that that's just their attraction, or that's just their preference, attraction, or they just have nothing to do with black guys at all? Like it's just
The
they
black guys are, I so my home in Alabama is in rural Alabama, correct?
Oh.
It's rural.
Mm-hmm,
It's I live in like the richest county in Alabama, but
mm-hmm.
it's fairly rural. So there are not a lot of black kids there, right?
Okay.
There's not a lot of black boys, but the black boys that are there, most of them are dating the white girls. Now, I have a friend that told her son, you're not dating a white girl. No. And she was purposely said, I'm raising my son. You pull your pants up. I don't want him hanging. You get it. You do well in school.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to college. You're going to be a great husband for a black woman.
Okay.
That was how she raised him. And I think she might have given up that fight maybe his senior year of high school or the freshman year. I want to say maybe freshman year of college. He dated a white girl, but she was adamant you are not. And
Do
but
you think he
you
did
know,
it as rebellious, or he was just curious,
no,
or
no, it was that's all you saw.
okay?
Football players, most of the football players, the baseball players, basketball players, the guys, black guys were in, most of them were in sports, right? And so they, the low white girls was, they was on their game, right? And that's what most of those black boys did. I can say that some of the black girls that had ties with the rest of Birmingham, which is urban, they would date guys from there because the majority of the black boys in that school system or in that city where they were dating white girls.
Mm,
So it's not so much as a preference as that's who first expressed interest in my daughters.
okay.
Okay. And Tora, do you think that your daughters had a similar situation or no? It was a choice or was that's who is available?
No, I think my kids just um is not attracted to black men in any sense because I've never even heard them like celebrities. Like, Michael B. Jordan is the it guy right now. And how Denzel is for us, Michael B is for them. And they're not, well, even any of, they're just not. I've never even heard them say anything about a black person, a black male in any aspect like it was great.
Wow.
So that's what always, it didn't bother me or anything. It's just that I think I let them be free love. It's not even just white guys. They would date anyone, that they were attracted to, but I just don't think that they're attracted to black men at all. At all. And my first boyfriend was a Jewish white guy, that I just didn't even know he was Jewish and I didn't know he was white. That's just the way we were raised. Until I got older, I knew all of that. And I literally was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. I just thought I was just dating a guy that was cute, that was in my elementary school, in my middle school, and that was it. And we weren't like intimate or anything. We were dating because I didn't do that back then. But I caught
Yeah,
up.
we're a different race.
Yeah, I know.
We're raised differently.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we're raised a little different.
when I
So
got
no, my
started,
girls.
I got started. But no, I wasn't doing any of that back then. But for my daughters, they started dating late in life, in high school. And when they did start dating, it was predominantly the Spanish or white guys. They never had a black boyfriend or never talked to a black guy. So, and I know black guys try to talk to them because I sneak and read some stuff and see got black guys in their DMs saying I would love to take you out and stuff, but they're like, not interested.
And you're married to their black father. So they
Mhm.
saw that modeled for them, but they still made a different choice.
Yeah, yeah. And that could
So
be it.
that yeah, so my daughters are different in that they think black guys are cute and they do swoon over the actors and everything. So that wasn't there, and they actually swoon over the cute black guys, but the cute black guys were chasing, the white girls. So yeah, that's the way. And now I will say that it's yeah they like Hispanic guys, so they're the rainbow,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. They're the rainbow. And my son, before he went to Howard, he only dated Caucasian women. So after Howard, I haven't seen him with. I mean, no, I haven't seen him with any race other than African
Isn't
American.
that interesting? What do you think accounts for that, Tora?
I think once he realized that they were, because all he saw was Caucasian women. He went, like I told you, he went to a Catholic
Oh,
school,
his school
and
was different.
yeah, and it was St. Mary's. So there was his prom date was the only black girl in his school. So, and she was gorgeous, by the way. So it wasn't hard for him to say, I want to go with her. Plus, at that moment, I definitely like that. But once he got to Howard, I think he saw equally beautiful, successful, driven, same desire to want to be something in life black women. But before then, I think it wasn't really other, that many out there. I don't think he saw that as a variety for him, that black women were successful, beautiful, outgoing, and wanted to be something. I think he just thought that, what was in front of him was all that, they were to our layers. And I really think that, I don't think they showed him positive pictures. I wouldn't expect them to, they taught him about slavery, of course. And, he taught him about, some of the black inventions, but I don't think he actually knew until he got to, historically black college that like, wow, y'all beautiful and sexy and everything under the sun. So I think that's what changed him. And I really think it would change my daughters too if they were around predominantly or historically black anything. I think that would change them too. But I think because they were not around that at all in their entire life, from their sports to their colleges, it's just like that's what they're readily available for.
But their high school is the same high school that my kids went to, and that's a really diverse high school with blacks, whites, Latino, a lot of Latinos, all kind of folks there. And as everyone knows, both my kids date black, but your son's situation is very different because it sounds like he dated what was available. He didn't have any other choice. But your daughters, did have black, I don't know what quality of candidates, but there were black boys at that school.
They were there, and they all my oldest daughter, who's 20, will be 21 soon. She only had black girlfriends there, but my youngest daughter, her best friend throughout high school was a Caucasian girl,
Mhm.
and so it was for her. I kind of can understand she didn't, see any or hang around anything, but when they party, like you said, they party around a diverse group of kids, and somehow that's all she gravitates to, or they gravitate to.
So, Tawana, your daughters are still in Alabama?
They're all still in Alabama. My oldest lived in Georgia for a while, and she's back in Alabama now. And so I was listening to you guys talk. So most of my daughter's friends were white.
Okay.
Each one of them had one or two black girlfriends, and that was it. There wasn't a lot of black people where they grew up at. So and I will say that the the star athletes, the black kids that were not star athletes, black boys,
Mhm.
were not really anybody they'd be interested in dating. And so that was
Mhm.
tough. um I don't think most of them even dated. Those black men even dated. If they did, it may have been someone else from, from Birmingham or the surrounding communities. And for some of those black kids in where we grew up, which is Helena, Alabama, where we live, um, some of them have family, their roots is actually in Birmingham. So when they go back to Birmingham, they're around black people. So some of the girls, the black girls, because most of the black guys were not dating them either, they had boyfriends from Birmingham. But my family is not from Birmingham. Now, we lived there, but we're transplants. So I think that made a difference for some of the other black girls out there. But I will say that the boys they dated, some of them dated only black women. They were white, but they
Mhm.
only dated black women. There's a couple that dated both, but most of them they only dated black women.
Okay.
And do you notice a dip? Like my daughters are across the board black. There is, I think I missed a whole bunch of blackness growing up. I didn't get a lot of seasoning in me. I wish I had. I'm catching up though. I'm catching up real fast. But my daughters have all kind of seasoning. They are right off the break. They are black women that are dating white men, and I know the white men, and especially for my oldest daughter, have learned so much about black culture that they are like, I always tell them, I'm like, it's gonna be hard for you to date somebody else other than a sister after messing with her. I mean, my daughter will take her weave out and put it on the counter. My daughter will tell you your food doesn't have seasoning in it. Anything there is no I'm trying to be a white woman, that a black woman
No,
to be a white woman.
not at all.
Not my
I
children
mean,
at all.
my daughter's boyfriends used to come to the house and they'd be like, yeah, oh yeah, they would come for barbecues, or they come for Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, and they would eat and they just kind of lay back and pat their stomach like, yeah, we don't get this at my house. So they were very into black culture. So
I said the same thing. I said
it wasn't a walk on,
yeah, no,
like they
these.
weren't walking on the wild side. They knew black culture.
And see,
So,
all the white guys they've dated have been lily white. And by the time my daughter's finished with them, it is, I get afraid almost. I'm like, they gonna lead the revolution because they don't dumb it down. And that's why I guess I really don't even bother or worry about it, that they're being tainted in any way, or because once you know a Candace Owens, I don't know her personally, but once you hear her speak and you know she's married to a Caucasian man, I never worry about that with my children at all. They are the direct opposite of her.
Yeah.
If anything,
Yeah.
they say things. I'm like, you have to say that. Ma, I don't care. Let them know. They need to know. I'm like, oh my God, they will say it.
Now my kids started off in my oldest started off in a private school, so that was predominantly white. Then I transferred them to a Christian school, which was there was all black.
Mhm.
There might have been one white kid, maybe fifth or sixth grade or something, but it was all black. So they had that black experience, but my kids didn't really fit in because I drilled them on the way they spoke, the way they pronounced words. I had to do speech pathology. I had to work with a speech therapist because not only did I have a southern drawl when we left Alabama, I couldn't speak consonants and sounds. So I was in speech, with a speech therapist for 2 or 3 years, and
I don't hear it. I do not hear your Southern twang, and I listen, and that's my thing that I do. I was like, where are you from? Because when you said Alabama, I'm like, well, I hear something, but I don't hear Alabama.
yeah, and when I joined the military, because I said I was from Alabama, people look down upon you as if you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to straighten many people out. Let me help you out. But I was determined that my kids' speech patterns would not betray them, where people need to look at them stupid first and go, "Oh, okay, I was wrong. You're smart." I didn't want that for them. So because I raised them like that, and I took them out of the country, and we traveled and we did all these things, there was for the most part, my kids didn't really fit in
Mm-hmm.
with the average Black child in Birmingham. They did not. Now, they tried, they did, but they were always kind of apart. And so that was when I realized. I was like, I started telling, my oldest daughter was about what, 8 or 9, and I
Mm-hmm.
started telling her, you need to find love where love finds you. And like I said, she didn't want to hear, because she had gotten to the Christian school, it was all Black, so she didn't want to hear about dating white people. In fact, I found one of her diaries where she called me an Oreo, and my feelings were hurt. I was like, first of all, where did you learn language like that?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so when I started telling her, find love where love finds you, she was in her Oreo stage, right? And when I pulled them out of Birmingham, and we bought a house where they could just go to school for free, because the school system was really good. It switched, and so after a bit, she realized it, and I can say that I told her, her first boyfriend, I mean, was just the nicest,
Mm-hmm.
respectful, treated my daughter like a queen. I was like, so here's your standard for life. Whether he's Black, white, Italian, whatever, this is your standard for life. This is how a man treats you.
So
I mean,
Tawana, when your girls went to college, did they go to PWI, predominantly white institutions, all three
all
of
of them
them?
did. All three of them.
Did anybody try to, Tawana is my soror in Delta Sigma Theta. Ooh. Did anybody try to play, any of them try to pledge Delta?
They did not. My middle daughter was like, I don't want that. And my youngest daughter that's my wildflower, Beatles fan. She wanted a
Oh.
Beatles. So she's my wildflower, right?
Hmm.
Along with
Just,
my daughter.
vegan, dyes the hair in her arm colors when she wants to.
Really? Okay.
That's my
Your
my
flower
wildflower.
child, yeah.
That's my flower child. She got that from her daddy.
Okay.
Uh, and the oldest one, it was, graduate or pledge, and she was right at that point where she'd intended on it, but she was majoring in engineering. She said, I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
swing it.
Okay.
I couldn't. I wanted to, but I couldn't swing it. I think she actually spoke. She had some of the girls she'd went to the Christian school with were there at her university and had pledged.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I couldn't swing it with my course load. And my youngest daughter, no,
It's
she
not
was
even
not.
in it's not even in on the horizon, right? Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Well, I don't want
But
to.
they knew, hey, but they knew it was this is so funny. My middle daughter had her roommate, because my middle daughter went to the Alabama, the University of Alabama, but the Deltas are
That's
kicked
the
off the
Crimson
yard.
Tide one that everybody's
That's the
always talking
Crimson
about.
Tide. Yeah, it's the University of Alabama, right? So
Okay.
they were kicked. The Deltas were kicked off the yard for a
Oops.
long time. So my daughter's roommate pledged Zeta, and so she was expecting, to her status is going to rise up a little because she pledged it. And so she came back to my daughter. My daughter's like, you didn't. She told her, you didn't say nothing. And my daughter's like, say what? I pledged, Zeta Phi Beta. My daughter said, what is that?
Thank you. Whoop, 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 but I won't go there.
So she said it's a Black sorority. My daughter said, no, it isn't. There's only two: Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Kappa Alpha.
I do know a Zeta, a woman who pledged Zeta from my high school. She just pledged a few years back, so I'm going to tread lightly. But your daughter shares a very popular opinion amongst many of us. I will say that.
I had to take that one. All I told her was, you can pledge Delta, but my money's not paying for you to pledge AKAs. and that's all I ever talked about. So she really didn't know there was sigma gamma rho or zeta phi beta. So it kind of took the air out of that young lady's sail.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. Oh wow.
Yeah, all the ladies
Unintentional,
in my
but
church are all deltas, every last one of them,
I
and
have
they.
a lot of AKAs in my family too, but I don't know what to tell them. I mean, they chose what they chose, but I knew the way to go, of
yeah,
course.
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I was going to say, I'm not trying to change the subject, but I wanted to bring this up because one of my brothers moved to Florida and the other one moved to North Carolina. And that was my first experience actually going to the South was North Carolina. I've been to
That's
Florida,
not
but
the
I've
South.
been to the,
That's not the
Yeah, North
South.
Carolina is very
That's not the
cosmopolitan.
South.
but
That's not the South.
And he's in the
he
Raleigh
lives
Durham area too, so that's
yeah,
different
That's
he
not the
lives right
South.
outside of Raleigh and Apex, which is
different
very
from the
close,
South.
very close. So I've never
That's the South.
experienced the South really like that. I think the furthest I'd gone was Atlanta, Georgia, of course, during the Freaknik era, which I also didn't get the Southern experience.
Mm-mm.
So when I went there, there was, I guess, people there who were from Alabama. And we were going into a store, and of course, because I have manners, I held the door open for the people that were coming behind me. And no one said thank you. Everybody just went in. So of course the door was very heavy
These
and
are white or black people behind
white
you.
people, white
Okay.
people.
Okay.
And there were about six of them. So the last two was a woman and two children. Well, the last three was a woman and two children. So of course, by the ones going in, no one said thank you or I got it. I let the door slam on the last three people. So of course, all of them turned around and they started, trying to like say stuff like, "Well, what were you thinking about? Why would you do that? You saw her coming." I said, first of all, none of y'all said thank you, and I don't know where you're from, but I'm not from here. I'm from up north, and what I saw was you disrespecting someone with manners. I don't know how y'all do it down here, but once y'all did that to me, I felt some kind of way. So yeah, it might have slammed on the child foot and the woman foot, but I don't care. So of course, that was my thing. So they said that they were from the deep south. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't even know. So the lady at the cash register said, "Oh, they're from Mississippi or Alabama." I said, "Oh, that's the deep south." She was like, "Well, I'm assuming that's what she said, because we have a lot of people, that moved to North Carolina from those places." Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I never had a desire to go to either one. We had gymnastics meets that were supposed to be in both of those places. And because I had only heard the horror stories of the deep south, which was Alabama, I never had any desire to want to ever go there or want to give anybody a dollar of anything of mine there. But when I met you and I heard all the wonderful things you're saying, I think I'm like what Kim's teaching me about Africa.
Missing
She
it.
teaches me so much that I'm on the internet every night looking and learning more about Africa, because I didn't realize I was prejudiced. I dare say I'm racist because I feel like that is such a corporate thing that I dare say
Yeah,
that.
not
But I feel
racist,
like
but
I've been made prejudiced about Alabama. You making it out to be this place. And I'm like, you said I refuse for
well,
you to make me think that I'm dumb because I got a southern accent. I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, you're saying all this stuff. I wanna experience
well,
it now.
it's so black and white people feel that way about people from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I remember, when I was a little older, I was asking my mom why did I have to take those classes. I was a child. I tell people all the time, I was a special ed child. They pull out of the class and I went and sat with this lady to teach me how to talk.
Because you
And
were
so my mother,
And now she's a doctor, so things can change. Never be discouraged.
they can.
Always
And
keep pushing.
so my mother said that she said because we were from the South, black and white, and we spoke with a Southern drawl, they said none of us could speak. So they made us do speech, speech pathology, go to the speech therapist. So I don't know how true that was, but I just remember being singled out and pulled out because of that. And I can remember even my friend who was from Georgia, her husband was like a major in the army, and she was, there was an officers' wives club. So when your husband is, one officer, lieutenant, captain, colonel, major, whatever, there's an officer wives club. Well, now it's officer spouses club, I would imagine. But she even said that the women there would go, "Oh, you're up north now. Your child's going to need some real gloves and not those yarn things because they get wet and he gets cold." And they spoke to her like she was a complete idiot. Now, here's someone that had been married for like almost 20 years, traveled the world with her husband, traveled, literally traveled the world, because they were married 16 years before they had kids.
Mhm.
Then they had a child, but they spoke down to her like she didn't know how to dress them. And they would say things like, oh, we're going to a function and casual means this. And like they had to actually tell us how to dress.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah, that then that was because we said we're from Alabama or from Georgia or Mississippi or Louisiana. People just assume you're backwoods and you're dumb.
Tennessee too, maybe, right?
Tennessee, Kentucky, yeah.
So what Tora
Mhm.
was saying about her experience in North Carolina with the whites in the door,
Mhm.
does that sound like a kind of entitlement that a white person from the Deep South might feel?
So that's a it depends question, right? Because I've had plenty of white kids come to my house. Their parents come. White kids stayed over at nighttime. My daughter stayed at their house. I've gone into plenty of stores and had white people open the door for me.
Mhm.
I've opened the door for them, and it was just the thing that you did, right? It was
Oh,
normal. We did it for everybody.
what also the
That
counselor said really quick, she said that you should be lucky because you'll have some people from the deep south that, girl, when you walking down the street, they want you to step off the curb and move out. That was one of the things I meant to bring up that
What
she
year was this, Tora?
this was my brother's been there a couple times, was probably about 3 years ago, 3, 4 years
Wow.
ago.
So, and that there goes to the it depends question,
Mhm.
because we were in Birmingham, and really Helena is a suburb of Birmingham, even though it's very rural. It
Mhm.
is a suburb of Birmingham, so that is different.
Mhm.
But you still have places. I put it to you like this: you have Auburn University, right, which is southern Alabama,
Mhm.
near the not too far, a couple hours from the Florida state line. You
Okay.
have Alabama, which is 45 miles from Birmingham. Now, Alabama gets a lot of flack about sororities, and it's not as much as they used to, but racial incidences, right?
Mhm.
But Auburn gets off the hook because Auburn is further away from Birmingham. However, you will have people to come to University of Alabama and Auburn University, and they are white, and they have seen very few black people in their lives.
Mhm.
They have grown up almost totally in a white society, and the blacks that they saw were predominantly poor, on food stamps or wealth stamps. So they have this idea that all black people are this. So
Mhm.
when you held that door open for them, it's like, I'm entitled to. She's serving me like she's supposed to. But
Wow.
that's not all white people in Alabama, because one thing that I saw, my flower child protested. It probably still protesting now since George
I remember
Floyd.
you told me that.
Yes, but predominantly the people she's protesting with are white. When George Floyd happened in May up
Mhm.
until February, March,
Mhm.
those people protested, mainly whites with a few blacks in there. And
Mhm.
they protested from Mobile, Alabama to Huntsville, Alabama,
Mhm.
and all in between. They were predominantly white.
Okay.
Wow.
So
So
it depends. So it really does just
So
depend.
it really depends. It depends on what town they're from. And some of these really rural towns where all the black people they see, like if they're coming from a black belt county where it's just very rural and most of the black people there are poor, they have an idea that all black people must be this. I
okay.
mean, part of the reason why I really figured out it was time for me to leave Alabama is after I got my doctorate again, people that know me and they know that I don't tell people you got to call me Dr. Carter, because I'm a doctor whether or not you call me one or not.
Thank you.
That's how I think about it. However, I was providing services for the VA in homes. And when I introduced myself, I always introduce myself as Dr. Carter. And
Mhm.
depending on the flavor, whether or not I said you can call me Tawana. But there are people that just demanded to know my first name. And what's your first name? Is Doctor.
Dr.
Because in Alabama, it is a hard and fast rule. You don't call me by my first name unless I
Absolutely
offer
not.
it. And furthermore, if I'm black and you want to go straight to my first name and we haven't built rapport, there's a reason why you're doing it. And I was very adamant, it's
And that
doctor.
reason
And my
starts with
last,
an
That just
R and
happened on
ends with the
CNN. I was
K.
correct.
trying to get the
It
doctor.
happened several times. And I had people that would say, hey, you, and not call, to keep from saying
Doc.
Dr. Carter, they would say, hey, you. and they refuse. And I was like,
And we're talking
it's
about Caucasian people.
yeah, they refuse to call me Dr. Carter.
That's
And again, if I introduce myself as Miss Carter, I'm telling you, you don't get to call me by my first name, and I don't get to call you by your first name either.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
to push the issue by consistently asking me for my first name, you don't get to do that because we don't know each other like that. And at that point, I was like, I need to switch. I want to stay, I want to stay the person I am as I am. And the more I hear that, it would make me angry. So I was like, it's time for a change of scenery. You're
It's
done
so
with the
funny you
South.
said that because my friend that I was telling you about that lives in California, that's also a doctor or a Dr. Bryant. I either call her Doc when I text her or say something, or I say Dr. Bryant. I never call her by her first name or just say. I just feel like once you earn that title, and I even have a stepmother who's a doctor. I even call her Doc now. I think once you earn that title, it's yours.
Well, you do know that a law degree is a Juris Doctorate. So
Oh yeah.
technically, I am doctor as well, but I'm just playing. But you know, the thing that you said, Tawana, about it depends on where you are. I think
Hmm.
that that really is relevant in a lot of parts of the country. It's
Yeah.
relevant in Maryland. It's relevant in Virginia. It's
Hmm.
probably relevant in upstate New York. It's relevant
Ooh,
in a lot
station
of
there.
places.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
ma'am, it
relevant in
is.
Massachusetts if you're not
Hmm.
near, even if you're in Boston. But you know, it's relevant in a lot of parts of the country. Are you in a diverse metropolitan area? Because if you
Right.
are, that's going to affect the nature of your experience as a Black person
Hmm.
versus being in a rural area where there's some traditional ways that I don't think any of us would probably be comfortable with.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I taught school in Florida from 1994 to 1998. And of course, all the janitors, custodians were all Black.
Mhm.
And there's this one Black custodian, which, he reminded me of my grandfather. So that's a sign of respect, right? Yes, sir, no, sir. That's just, how you're raised to treat people. That man will not look me in the eye. And I had seen on movies where Black men had been taught to, you never look a white man in the
Oh
face, you
yeah.
look to the side, or
Oh
you look at the ground. It blew my mind in 1994 because I was a teacher and he had elevated me. In his mind, he refused to look me in my eye.
Oh,
And
wow.
it just bothered me. And because it was like, I've seen this on television, but I'm seeing it in real life. He did not. Everybody, he would look to the side and look down and cant his head a little bit to be sure you knew he wasn't looking you in the eye and disrespecting you. And I guess it bothered me because it was hurtful.
That
I'm
is
thinking to
hurtful.
myself,
That is
My
hurtful.
lifetime, and it
you
bothered
went, yeah, you've gone through it. You've lived through stuff I've only read about or seen movies on
me.
TV. You are due respect because you survived,
Mhm.
right? But he would not. And even though, we would talk and chit chat for the 4 years I was there, he never would look me in the eye. And that just was like, wow.
That's PTSD. That's a
That's what it
response
is.
to trauma.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what it
Yeah.
is. It
I
is.
mean, not that you're the licensed therapist, but it sounds like PTSD to me.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
traumatic
It's
brain.
survival. It is survival. When you talk about DSM-5, which is, what therapists use to diagnose people, and it's gotten better, but it was diagnosing Black men with a lot of schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia in the 50s, 60s, and 70s because of, for us, it was survival techniques. Talk about the man's gonna get me, the man's watching me. It's like, that's not paranoia, that's the truth. They know when they're on the streets how they got to behave with the man. And they
Yes.
know that if they don't do a certain thing or behave a certain way around the man, it was going to go bad for them. We still getting Black men killed now, so that hasn't changed.
And you
Although the
know,
go ahead.
yeah, when I lived in Atlanta, I think, Tora, I may have mentioned this one time before. I met of course, I met a lot of people from rural areas in Georgia who had moved to the big city. And one of the women that I befriended, I could hear the fear of white people in her voice. Oh no, you know,
Hmm.
those white people, they're gonna find you.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter if you try to hide, they're gonna get you. And it was clear to me from DC. I'm like, girl, what? I wanted to say that, but I was sensitive because I understood that she
It's
was
still
coming
there.
from a different place, but I could
It's still
hear
there, Kim.
It's
that.
It's still
still
there.
there.
It
Literally,
is
we
still.
started.
I have relatives. It bothers me. But I gotta understand, my dad was in the military, so we lived all around the world. But there's still that fear.
Mm,
There is still very much that fear. It used to be a time, of course, that's kind of going out the window now with interracial dating.
mhm.
But there used to be a time when, the fear of God was put in black boys. You don't date a white girl. You don't go to her house. You don't be seen here. You don't do this. You don't do this. And that fear was passed on from generation to generation because so many people feared for their son's life, right?
Mhm.
But of course, now they chase each other, and for most places it's not a problem. There's still some places that is still a problem.
One time, because I'm a writer as well, one time I went to a workshop, like a Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, like a black workshop.
Mhm,
And so all of us were black, all of the aspiring authors.
mhm.
And one girl was from the South and said that she dated white men, but that it was a secret. She dated them on the
Yes.
down low. And I was like, girl, are you kidding me? But that's what she said.
A
I
sister
had
does this?
Yeah, I had friends that said, these were educated men. Once a black woman dates a white guy, she can't come back to a black guy. She's done. She's no more good to the black race.
He's saying that, but trust me when I tell you, some of them white men just treat black women like queens. They don't want them to perm their hair. They want the natural. You don't have to get all dolled up, and I just want you in your natural. Some of them don't even want to go back because it's work. Dating a brother can be work. Like they want a certain look and aspect in life, and you just get at some point in time in your life, you like, love, I don't feel like it today. And I know
You
from
get
just
what you get.
other sisters do it. I'm like, y'all, you look like that. And he like, girl, he loves my afro and my lips, and no, he don't want even no lipstick on. I'm like, what?
Remember some years ago, I used to notice this, that especially in Wisconsin where I went to undergrad, it seemed like the white men always dated the most black women
I'm
because
noticing
the
it.
ones who wore the natural, because back then it was unique. Now we're all getting into natural, but
Yeah.
back then it was like, oh, she's wearing locks. She's wearing her natural
Yes,
curl pattern. And those were the white people, the white men flocked to those
yes.
women. I never knew what that was about though.
And they still do. I'm telling you, I've been watching
Mm.
it lately, and I've just been saying, y'all ain't putting in no work like with these guys. None. Like your natural form. And I think they more attracted to your brain and where you and they can have a conversation about politics or anything. They just love the fact that they can have and we don't, as black women, we go deep. We don't fix, we can have 6 kids and we don't make it seem like it's a hard day's work.
True.
I know for a
Yeah.
fact, being around some women and those type of women all the time, if they got 4 kids, you better believe that is the day's work for them. Don't ask them to do anything else. That is the epitome of life. But with black women, we like, oh, we had to go to work, we had to go to school, we had to take care of kids, we had to do this, we had to do that. And they
Help
look at
out auntie, stop by my mother's, all that, all
and
that.
they
Yes.
look at us and
Yes.
admire that. And they like, are you kidding me? My wife has a chef. She has a nanny. She has a housekeeper. How do y'all do it? And we do it all. So I know for
All
a
of
fact
it.
when I hear them talk, they be like, yo, how do you do it? How do you do it? Like they admire us for that. And sometimes brothers don't give us our credit when we see it. They know we doing it, but they won't ever say, oh my God, my wife cleaned the house, she cooked, she take care of the kids, she going to school, she work. You be like, brother, I need you to just tell us a little bit. That's what we went.
A little
That's what we
appreciation. A little appreciation
Tora likes to
goes
get
a
her
long way.
roses. Tora said, give me my roses. Where are they?
That's all I'm saying.
So
So
this is a
that's what
question I have for you ladies, since that has not been my experience. How do you find that the parents of the white young men your children are dating, or even in Steve's case, the white women, are as open as their children to interacting with you, to embracing the interracial relationship, or have you seen pushback from the family on the other side?
I've had one pushback, and she humiliated her son, and I could have just wept for this kid. So
Oh,
my
wow.
youngest daughter's first boyfriend was white, and he pretty much told his parents, F all of y'all, I like black girls, and that's what I'm dating. You don't tell me what to do. Pretty much that's what he said to his parents. I don't care what you tell me. And his parents were like, they weren't feeling it. So, I worked a lot. I had a private practice. I was, getting a PhD, and I was like, okay, let me go meet. She's dating. Let me go meet the mother so we can click and make sure everything, just have that vibe going, right? So I got over there and I drove up and to meet. Well, first of all, I was out there for a minute. I'm trying to think. I was out there for several minutes before she finally came out. And I was like, really? You're right there. I see you, right? So she
Mm.
finally came out and said, oh, his dad got drunk and left again. Yeah, he gets drunk all the time. He gets drunk and he just leaves me. And she just starts pouring out the family business like she laid it out. And I looked at over at this kid and he just dropped his head to his chest and started kicking the dirt on the ground because she called herself trying to say, we're like good and poor people, so you don't want any contact with us. And I just kind of
Oh,
listened to her and I
wow.
nodded and I looked at him and I was just shook my head. I was like, you have issues, but you're humiliating this child. And I wanted to say that, but I was like, I don't know you, so I can't go there. But he was a really sweet kid. That was the only pushback I had. The second guy she dated, I think she tried to adopt my daughter. I mean, she
So totally
did. She
different.
totally different. I was a little because each time they date, I want to check it, and it's a it's a running theme in my family. My brother were in Arizona, so my sister was the closest to Alabama, and so my sister gave him the rundown. My sister, they had to meet my sister, not my dad, not my brother. They had to deal with my sister, and she was no joke. So the running joke is, yeah, you dating, so let me bring my sister to you so she can talk to you. And so they had to withstand that. But my dad had a problem. He had a problem with my oldest daughter. He grew up in the South. That's what he knew. And he had a problem why she couldn't date black boys. He wanted to know. And then it was like, he finally came up and see all the little black boys dating little white girls. And he became her fiercest protector. If anybody say anything to you because you dating a white man, you call me, tell them to call me. If I need to come back, you let me know. So
Okay.
he became her fiercest protector. He had a problem at first, but he realized this. I think he saw how Patrick treated her,
Mm.
and
Okay.
that did it for him. But yeah, I didn't have any problems with any of them except for that one. But other than that, they were real good people because that's my thing. I want to see, are you on the wild side? Trying to see what you said
Oh, the
what it
jungle
tastes like.
fever thing.
Yeah, are you here for jungle fever purposes? Because you're gonna have a problem with me, and so I do. I'm honest. I do every last one of them. This first thing I want to do: sit down, chit chat, talk with them. I want to know about you, and so none of them have been, and so I've been pretty happy about that.
Well, that's good. What about you, Tora? Have you experienced any? I know that you've been pretty close with at least one of their boyfriend's family. Have you ever experienced the flip side?
Never. And there was, and this actually, and I'm not saying this as a coon, I'm not wearing this with a badge of honor, but I just do, I believe that my upbringing has given white folks another look at black people. I don't think they even, I really don't believe they see us as the black people they were programmed to believe were out there in the
Mm.
world. Because I remember when we were at one of her ex-boyfriends family house and they had a huge yard, so they went there and they had a church get together. I guess people members from their church were all in their backyard, and so they were like, oh, please stay, we got food and everything. And I was like, okay, we will stay, because she used to stay the weekends at their house, so we were going there to pick her up. And I was like, all right, I'll stay. So we're talking, to some of the people in the church, whatever. And we're, of course, I'm silly, so I'm making jokes about stuff and we're laughing. And a couple of people, I guess, start feeling comfortable and they come over towards us and they say, well, this is so and so, because I won't give him credit, but this is so and so friend from college mother. Like 3 or 4 people heard this woman say this as introducing her husband to me. They came over there. It's like, no, that's her that's his girlfriend's mother. Yeah, they're dating. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even mean, I say friends because I always say these young kids, and they were like, no, no, no. And they got her straight. And I was like, oh, okay. That's how we doing this thing now. Okay. Yeah, I'm her mother. And Yeah, they're dating. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Please don't think that I meant. I said, I wasn't. I didn't think anything by it. When you said friend, I was okay with it because I don't mind you saying friend. I like saying friend too. I don't want to think too deep into anything other than the husband or whatever. But yeah, they like 3 or 4 people checked her on it, and we were the only black people there, mind you. There was no other black people other than my children, me and my husband were there. And when I say we did things together all the time, like we went bowling, we went hiking, we just did so many different things together. And it got to the point, like you said, they were, we knew each other's problems in each other's house and stuff like that, and shared solutions and whatever, but it was like a family a thing. And I just think it's because my upbringing, I don't have any guards put up. So I'm not ready to, I'm starting to get guards though. I noticed it the other day. We were walking in the streets of DC, and there were several white guys outside of a truck, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was just my husband and I, and we were walking, and they stopped dead mid sentence and turned around and looked at us. Now, normally I would have never even noticed that. I would have never felt uncomfortable. I would have never been like, wait a minute, what you doing? Why you do that? Why you stop mid-sentence? What do you, wait, don't even try it. I'm not her. You know what I'm saying? I literally had all that going on. That has never happened to me in my life. And I actually got upset with myself. I was like, are you ready for this life? Because you would have never been uncomfortable seeing them. You would have never been standoffish. You would have never been like noticing like they stopped mid-sentence and all of them turned around and looked at you and him. And I don't even know, I didn't even bring it up to him because that's how mad I was with myself. I didn't even say to him, did you notice that they stopped talking and turned around and looked at us?
But why do you think you did that? Is it because of what's going on in this country with the police killings? Is it because is it because I'm always telling you how black and beautiful we are, or what is it that you think is changing your um, perception with respect to that?
Everything came at me from are are they listening to white people are supposedly are just trampling over black people right now?
Mm.
I thought of, oh my God, I hope these white people don't think that I'm the type of black person that if you do think you're gonna say something slick or come at me and him, we gonna, one of y'all gonna be half eaten by the time the police get here. Like I'm doing some Mike Tyson stuff to you, like I'm not crawling up in the fetal position and gonna let you kick me. That's not like all
So
of this.
it's the climate. So it's the climate. It's really what's happening in the country at this time.
That's what made me mad. And I didn't know how to fix it. I don't think I enjoyed the meal afterwards. I don't think I enjoyed my moments after that because I was so caught up in, dang, I'm her. I'm there now. Like I'm actually that person now. And I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels because I would never have thought that. I would never have felt all those emotions at one moment. Like, what y'all ready? What I'm
But I have some other comments, which we are running out of time on the things you said before, but just following this to its logical conclusion, that indeed is why I've said I had to pull back. That's why I think it's important not to allow yourself to be fed a constant diet of slavery movies, of this person got killed, that person got killed, they shot this one, they tackled this one, they punched out you, because it changes who you are, and you should be able to maintain control over what your perspective is. Even as you're aware, you can be aware without digesting it so much that it really influences you. But back to that story about the kids and the mother saying this is his friend from college. I just had a meeting a couple of days ago met up with one of my cousins, and we were talking about something along these lines, and he said that to me. But Kim, the ones who really are not racist, they'll check the other white people. You don't have to say anything. They'll check them for you. And then the second point I wanted to make is I used to hate that feeling when I went to school in Wisconsin that that because it's primarily white, it just was what, and I had a best friend who was white, and I mean, I'm fine. I can roll with the punches, but I hated feeling deep down like they really don't know black people and they really don't care for them, but they carve out a Kim exception. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's
Yeah.
Kim.
Yeah.
She's not like them. That's Kim.
Yes.
And I want them to understand, yeah, this is how we are. You
Yeah.
just
Yep.
don't know us.
Get it,
Like
Kim.
she had never
Right.
seen a black person in person before she met me as her roommate the first year in college in the dorm. And so I understood they don't know who we are. I want you to know we're all like this. We're not like those ones on TV. This is
Right.
us. But
Right.
they never, I don't think they ever, we didn't have that conversation, but it
Mhm.
was my feeling, even at that young age, that they never really got that it was always, we carve out an exception for Kim.
Let me
You
tell
know?
you, this is why I think I was even more mad at myself because I'm the only black in everything I do. I go to spin class. There's no other black person, not a man or woman. I'm only there. I go to Pilates. I'm only there. And it's not that that's white people stuff. It's not that. It's just I like to do these things, and they're just either not
It's
other
the
people.
locations where you go, because black people spin and all that stuff, but
Of
it's the
course they do.
locations.
It's
Yeah.
just not where I go. So my thing is now I was mad because I thought about it. Is this going to be my new normal where when I walk into places and I'm the only black now, I feel it? I never felt it before. I never cared. I never felt it. But that moment in DC last week checked me, and I had this. And I'm telling you, I never had it before. I've always watched historic movies, slave movies. I've always watched programming, race. All the movies I watch. I love all of it. I love all of everything. I really think that the Trump era of Caucasian man and woman and Karens, the Karens that I
Karen.
think they have put something in me that make me want to just gather up as many white people and be like, y'all start yelling. Okay, fight. I need y'all to start arguing and fussing and saying how you feel about these people because it made me, I seen regular people that I know acting like Karen. And I'm like, I never
You
knew you.
seen people you've known for years switch up in the Trump
No, no,
era
no,
and
no. When I
become
saw
Karen?
like a woman out in the store yelling at black people and saying, I'm gonna call the police on you. You shouldn't be in my neighborhood. Like I don't know this woman personally, but I know that woman. Like the
Mhm.
woman, the way she dressed, the way she talking, the way her hair, like you look like my girlfriend from here. And when did you become her? And it makes me want to look like, I don't know. Y'all gonna have to speak up because Karen has done an end for y'all. Like I look at some normal, everyday white women that I'm seeing being racist, and I just never saw that in my life before. Not from them, anyway.
And so it goes back because so it's from someone from Alabama. It
Mhm.
doesn't phase me. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because I have awareness. I've always had awareness. Now, I've also had that ability to compartmentalize and put on my rose-colored glasses, and like it's just we're all kumbaya, happy-go-lucky. But the awareness is there when it needs to be, right? And so I don't know if you guys are aware of a new term they've come up with recently, but it's pandemic stress experience. They're saying that all of us are now doing that, and it's part of the pandemic, but it's also what went down with George Floyd, and so many people saw it, and so all of that, all of that intersects with the Trump administration and with people saying it's okay now to call people the N word. It's okay to tell people to go back home because they look Hispanic or they look like they're Asian, not understanding they were born and raised here. All of that for some people was normalized, right? But the thing is, it's always been here. Some of us just were not aware that it was here. And
Now,
now they brought it out to the table and kind of people think it's okay to be that way. But now
That's
you
what
have
Trump
this
did.
awareness.
that's
That's
Trump
what
did
Trump
that.
did. He
But
did
it did
bring it
start
out the
there.
closet and
It
put it
started with
right on
McCain,
Front
though.
Street.
It started with McCain and Palin. They brought that fringe in from the border to the table, and now people think it's okay to be this way because you're trampling on my rights to be white or my right to be a nationalist. But it
right.
was always there.
But
It
when
was
John McCain shut it down and said, no, 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 he's not a terrorist, it put some people back in a box. And that's why I said I want to get those type of people who are willing to see when John McCain said,
probably they were in the box where you were, but they didn't go back in the box. They did. I was in Alabama. They didn't go back to the box.
Okay, y'all, that was our timer. We always go a little bit along further, but I wanted to make sure everybody heard it because people are I didn't hear it. What timer? So that was it. But we still have some minutes to talk.
Yeah.
But
okay, so
Tawana, you're saying that they were like that all along and they didn't retract.
I've I've known again, the awareness because of where I was brought up and how I was brought up. And again, I was brought up in a cosmopolitan, just everybody, right? But I had the awareness that it was there. So I've been called the N word in 1994, right? And that was well before John McCain or Donald Trump. I've been called the N word in North Carolina. So it was always there, but people didn't feel comfortable bringing it up to the surface. And the first time you saw people kind of getting comfortable was with McCain. And it went on for a minute before he finally had to step up and say, y'all, that's not true.
You're
But it
right.
was already out. It was it that, the news media had been blocking that stuff and not letting us hear it for
Yeah.
quite some time before he spoke up. But then after that, now people feel like they're at the table and they have a right to sit at the table. And so for me, having been in Alabama, it didn't go away.
Okay.
It Yeah, there are still some places where you probably don't want to go at nighttime in Alabama or certain time of the day
I'd
because
like
people
to ask this
change.
question, just because the way I was brought up. Did you ever feel like they were just good people and bad people in the world, or you always knew that there were some extreme white people who are horrible and some black people that are bad? Or did you always?
So yeah, I always knew because again, you got to understand how my mother raised me. She raised me that all white people are this. She put all of them in a box.
Okay.
And so when we went to Germany, which is the first duty station I was with my dad,
Mhm.
they weren't that way. Right now, she still was like, "Don't you over their house? Don't you do this? Don't you do this?" And they have lights and they have this. But I had friends who were not, so I didn't. I was young enough to see that you're telling me this, but what I see doesn't compute with what you're telling me.
Okay.
So I've always had to compartmentalize the way I was raised and what my eyes were actually seeing,
Okay.
right? And so I had a choice when I raised my kids. And sometimes I look back and regret now and I regret it, but I chose not to point out the black white divide with them. I didn't want to taint their childhood. Now, by the time they became teenagers, 15s, they started driving, I didn't have a choice. When you drive through this city and you get pulled over by the cops, you're going to be put in handcuffs. So don't argue, don't do this, do what they say. When you get pulled over, your hands are at 10 and 2. You turn on your dome light, you do this. I didn't have a choice at that time because they were driving. I wasn't going to be in the car with them. And so it happened exactly as I did. Now they didn't get pulled over in the one city where all the black people get in handcuffs. They may not like take you down to jail, but you will end up in handcuffs because they just embarrass you like that. It's a tactic. But my daughter got pulled over because she couldn't have been a young black child driving the brand new car I bought her for college. She got pulled over a number of times because she had a car that was new and she had the brand new tag before we got permanent. So she got pulled over and threatened. She got over and over. And here's a child that loved the police because that's how I raised her. And all it took was two run in with racist cops, and that just all 19 years of training went out the window. And so it was like, you told me this, and then reality was, but I was like, but I told you. I told you when you stop 10 and 2. It's yes, sir, no, sir. May I reach for my license? May I reach for my registration? She said, I told you that. But she thought because she had all the white friends that they were all on equal footing. You're not. And so it was painful for her to have to
I'm
come to
gonna be
that
like your
reality.
daughter. I'm gonna be like your daughter.
It's painful. I hurt.
Everything you just said, I was like, oh, this is gonna be me. It's gonna be.
I have looked back and I was like, maybe I just should have started at 5, but I didn't.
It's
I had
difficult.
nieces and nephews that were scared to death of cops, and I didn't want my kids to be scared to death of cops. Now I'm rethinking, like, shoot, maybe I should have
My
started
thing
low.
is always give yourself a pass because as a parent, we're just trying to, we do the best that we think we should be doing. We're doing the best that we can with the knowledge we have at that time.
Mhm.
And there's no booklet. It's a hit or
True.
miss. It's a
That's
trial
true.
and error. And you never know. Now, even with me, my kids didn't get all of that when they were younger either. I shielded them from slavery stuff. I didn't want them to feel the way you feel when you know your people used to be slaves, and
Hmm.
both of them have really close white friends. Both are various ones of whom have spent the night at my house on multiple
Hmm.
occasions, but they still were getting enough of it to know I'm Black. And it just seems like once they got older, they realized on their own. that something was different and they
the
went a
talk
different way.
the talk that goes among kids, they will wipe everything you told them out, because there are things that my kids never got at my house, but they knew, and I was like, well, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes,
they came
you
back.
get a pass. You get one from me
Yeah.
because parenting is just difficult. And if you are investing your time and your resources and you're thinking about what you're doing and you did the best you knew to do, to me, that was all you could do. Now, the ones who just kicking back with a wine or whatever and not raising their children, that's a different thing. But that's
Yeah.
not the kind of parents we are. So give yourself a pass, because I'll take a pass too whenever something pops up like, I did the best I could. Now we're
Yeah.
with this situation. How do we address it? How are we going to move forward? But ladies, I think that that is it for us. We have, the time went really fast. I
It
can't
really
really believe it
did.
was an hour. But I think we're nearing the end. I'd like to offer you, Tawana, the opportunity to share any last words with our audience, and also if they want to contact you, to tell them how they could do that.
Even if you're on
Absolutely.
social media, you can give your social media account.
Okay, okay. So yes, you can find me on Facebook, Tawana Carter Professional and Personal Coaching LLC. That is my business page, and you can also find me there for, Tawana Carter for Facebook. That's my Facebook profile. I am also on Instagram at Coach Carter. I think that's it. Coach Tawana Carter, Coach Carter. Find me on Twitter, Coach Carter, and you can find my website, tawanacarter.com. And I do have forms there. You can click on those. It will send me a message or an email. And ladies, I want to say I have really enjoyed this. I love talking with grown folk
Yes. Yes.
and getting that connection. And thank you so much. And I would be more than happy to come back and do something, another topic. It would be really good.
You are
Thank you
truly
so
amazing.
much, Tawana.
Amazing
We
honor.
enjoyed it, and we definitely look forward to having you on sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was my, I mean, I hope you come back because I got so much more I want to pick your brain about. So yeah, I'll probably be one of those people that hit you up on Facebook too.
And I
That's
would like
good.
to say that anyone can always drop a comment. If you can't find her anywhere else, drop a comment to the podcast or the video, and we'll make sure that she gets the word and is able to respond as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Thank you,
you.
Sora, for inviting me. Good to meet you, Tora.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
Okay. Another, our guests are so dynamic, and
So
she was
smart.
she started us in a direction that I didn't know we would go, but it was so
I
informative.
was glad she went there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I was glad.
Another, not a good one, another good one, because they
Another, and then she said doctor, and I was just like, oh my God, yes, Dr. Carter. God sent her. That's all I gotta say.
it was
Everything
right
I
on time. When I thought about her, I said, she would be a perfect guest because that's something she has in common with you. And I just thought it would be a good conversation, and it turned
I
out
like
even better.
hearing her perspective too, because it actually is something that I'm gonna bring up with me and Victoria that she said, because I didn't realize that, I think a lot of their dating, you know, stems when you said and their father's black, and I'm like, and they're yeah, I gotta ask them about that. Like, is it because your father's black? That's too much association with a black man that you like, just the thought of a black man. No, I'm not doing that.
I'd be interested to know what they said, that because that's an
Yeah.
interesting point.
Because
Well, are there any last nuggets that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
other than they have got to stay tuned because we have just so many more amazing guests. It's
We
not
have
even
things in store. Yes, we do. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Good night.